Hi, Salika here for Peak Survival. It's undeniable, globally we are experiencing a pandemic, and I'm interested in the psychology of survival. With me today is Tor A. Rain, who has a master's in cross-cultural psychology, is a first aid for feelings trainer, and a pain and fatigue specialist at the Helpful Clinic. Today we're going to review the stages of what we are all experiencing. So clearly we are going through some stages here during this pandemic.
Yes, and it's really interesting that the stages that happen when we're in any survival situation as an individual are actually the same stages that we're going through on a global scale. So with the coronavirus sort of pandemic really coming onto our radar, we went into the first stage, which is the response stage. So whatever type of crisis we are in, we always start at the response stage. So this is when our adrenaline goes full whack. This is when our survival response really kicks in. And it's kind of like all hands on deck. We need to firefight, problem solve really quickly to stay alive, to find ways of managing risks. And then sort of there's the initial part of the response stage, and then there's kind of a bit longer where we're kind of putting those solutions, interventions, and adaptations in place. So if we transpose it across to, like, I don't know, you're in the woods somewhere, you got stuck or got lost or whatever, something's going on. This is the stage where you're kind of figuring that out. You're creating a shelter, you're making yourself safe, you're pulling in some supplies, you're getting a sense of how much food have I got in my bag, is there water nearby? So that's the kind of response stage. So that's the first few weeks. And for us in Europe, because Italy went in first, I'm in the UK. So in a way, we were able to learn from other people's responses, so adapt some of their behaviors. But still, for the UK, there, just like any other country, there is that response part of that reaction. But the thing is, with that stage, we can't stay in there too long. And also, at some point, we will have got some of these things in place. People are in lockdown, people are figuring out how to do shopping or whatever. What happens then is that we move into adaptation stage. So the adaptation stage may last hours, days, months, but it has the same psychology, it's got the same mechanism. This is basically about holding steady. So in the response stage, it was all about taking action and really focusing on taking appropriate and proportionate action. In the adaptation stage, is very much about holding steady, staying the course. And so this is like the middle part of a movie. So if you think about like Rocky, so this is the part where he's training, he's drinking those eggs in the morning, he's out there running up those steps, he's like in the gym. And this is about showing up day after day after day. This is the part where we can start to lose our mojo, we can start to get frustrated, we can become impatient. We can also have pockets of euphoria because actually things are a little bit more stable now than they were in the response stage. So sort of psychologically, this is the kind of resilience part of the movie or of the experience we're having. The third and final stage is the reintegration stage. So we're clearly a way off that stage, so I won't focus on that very much. But the reintegration stage has its own kind of psychology and components. So that's often about strategy, doing the strategy in stages, that reintegration in stages. It's like if you imagine that you've been, sort of somewhere in the woods for 3 days, 5 days, whatever. When you come back home, you're not going to sit down and have like a massive steak and knock back a 6-pack because your body will just go, what? You need to actually build, reintegrate yourself into that situation. So the same will apply in some, in different ways when we get to that point. But if we bring our attention to the stage that we are all in at the moment, so this is like spring 2020, we're in the adaptation stage here. And there are some very specific components of that stage that are important to bear in mind. So we've talked about resilience in a different video, but this is all about structure and habit and practice. This is about holding steady. It's about showing up, even if you don't, like Rocky, it's not like it's going like, yeah, let's go for another run every single day, but it's about actually doing the thing, showing up. And anybody who's had any kind of practice like that will know that sometimes we need to kind of cajole ourselves and kind of go, yeah, come on, let's do this together. So we need to have that internal mechanism.
Yeah. And if I can add on to that, I think, people might be watching this going, how do I cope through this? I'm feeling trapped, I'm feeling anxious. And, just from personal experience, what I've tried to do is create a routine. even if it's not the original routine, starting a new routine, because the brain likes that. You can't control the external factors, but all you can control right now is what you're doing, what you're saying. So, setting an alarm, waking up at the same time, having breakfast, self-care.
Yeah.
I do practice yoga. So again, connecting to breath, stretching, going for walks, exercise. I've been amazed actually. So much negativity and heavy information and misinformation from the media too sometimes, and it's partly contributing to heightened anxiety. But there's so many positive things that have come out of this. I've seen communities come together, people helping each other, getting to know one another. Some people have been neighbors here and never spoke to each other, and now friendships are coming out of this. I look on, even online, people are coming up with some really creative and hilarious videos, and just trying to find, some humor, some joy, some way of navigating this. And it's not to say, it's fun and easy. The reality is very different for different people. I mean, those who are on the front line right now, they're working crazy long hours. And in the UK, there's the huge campaign right now where we are clapping for our heroes on the front line, and their reality is very different to someone who's just been told, just stay home and watch some Netflix.
Exactly. And it's interesting because I talk about the kind of experience we're having, particularly the adaptation stage. This is in some ways, it's a rare, well, hopefully a very rare experience that we're having. So it's like, okay, well, how do I actually make something of this experience? What am I going to make it mean? Am I just going to grit my teeth and endure it, come hell or high water? Or am I going to go, okay, I didn't sign up for this, but I'm in it. So what can I do to channel those different experiences, those different frustrations and emotions, channel them into something constructive rather than going into unhelpful behaviors or habits, like just, watching movies all day, or, staying up all night, getting into unhelpful kind of bedtime habits, not doing my laundry, not mowing the lawn or whatever, and just ruminating. And anybody who's been in survival situations will know that the psychology here, particularly in terms of the playing kind of what if scenarios, or, those kind of thinking patterns can be really corrosive at this point. So actually seeing this as almost like a boot camp. Like I say, you may not have signed up for it, but let's use this as a pandemic boot camp to get some of your resilience skills, sort of really sharpened up, to get a sense of who are you? How do you function under duress? What are some of the behaviors that you do? My favorite question is always, is it helpful? Hence the Helpful Clinic is the name of the clinic, because it's also about being non-judgmental. Yeah, some of our behaviors may not be the most elegant ones, but actually, if it is genuinely helpful, then sure, keep doing that. And that kind of getting a sense of, how do I keep myself reasonably structured? We need to have buffeting times built in. It's like, you don't go to the gym every single day. That's not going to do your muscles any good.
Some people try,
Well, as far as I understand it, you need time. Well, you don't do the same muscles all the time.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So you might be doing legs or arms or whatever, but you need recovery time for the things that you've been practicing. And in a way, our psychology and our sense of self needs that as well. And I mean, I sometimes talk about giving people a prescription slip for like laughter supplements. It's like, okay, so for the next 10 days, you need to laugh twice a day. And then that's a YouTube video about something hilarious, or you can organically generate that laughter. I don't care. But because laughter has got, apart from the chemicals are really great, it really supports your intercostal muscles. So it supports the internal structure of your lungs. It also works with your breath. And we mentioned in a different video how breath is really key as almost like a tool to manage your adrenaline. And so that sort of resilience bootcamp isn't all about like heavy lifting. It's also about getting a sense of that pacing. So you're not kind of like, if you imagine, coming back to the Rocky sort of analogy here, if Rocky was training to competition level every single day, by the time he got to the fight, he would have been exhausted.
Absolutely. Complete burnout. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's also about getting a sense of my pacing, which is that holding steady phrase that I keep using, that we need to show up, hold steady, keep training, and then having those recovery times built in as well.
When we're talking about positive habits, some
Yeah.
people watching might be tipping back and forth between helpful and unhelpful habits. You might see people turning to alcohol, too much TV,
Yeah.
too much of anything really. And I think it's really important to be self-aware when those things are no longer helpful and tipping into unhelpful behavior. So I think, what message do you have for people who are, really feeling trapped, really struggling with their mental health and are watching this video right now?
So I would say two things. First of all, build your own dashboard. So if you were like a plane or a car, with a dashboard that shows up the indicators, what are your indicators? Get a sense of how do you know you're struggling? Rather than just like, I am struggling. Well, let's say, okay, in what way? What's the behavior that you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are the thoughts that you're thinking? What are the physical sensations you're experiencing? And so you start to kind of get a sense of, how do I work?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you've identified those things, to really kind of bring in some kindness. Yeah. I'm not so much like drop down and give me 20 kind of coach. I'm much more like, okay, let's do this together. It's like almost like that kind of sense of, if you think about top athletes, they have a coach that kind of gives them that no nonsense approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about blowing sunshine anywhere, but it's also about keeping it real and saying, you got this.
Mm-hmm.
And chances are for most of us, we kind of got this. We need to come back to remembering that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of breath is the key tool. So getting a sense of just expanding your breath a little bit. So the first tip here, if you're really just in this moment, struggling, your anxiety is kind of off the scale.
Mm-hmm.
The quick tip I have is the 5-7 breathing. So the 5-7 breathing is that you breathe in to the count of 5, you breathe out to the count of 7. And if you do this 5 times or 5 to 7 times, you are just calibrating your biochemicals enough to probably give you a bit more headspace and like, okay, maybe I've got something else that works.
Wow, so effective.
Another thing that you can do once you've done that for a bit is the 4x4 breathing, which has got a different function. So the 5 to 7 breathing is much more about the biochemistry.
Mm-hmm.
The 4x4 breathing is much more about the structural integrity of your lungs. So this is when you breathe in to the count of 4, you then hold your breath to the count of 4, you breathe out to the count of 4, and then you hold your breath again to the count of 4 before you take the next in breath. So if you think about 4x4 car, you want to make sure you do every single wheel on that car. And it's that kind of, or some people call it box breathing because it's got like 4 sides to it.
Yeah.
And in the moment, breath is going to be your gateway to whatever is next going to be the helpful choice. So I would say in the moment, that's a really good one. And then that kind of dashboard, getting into what are my indicators. And as always, like if your brake fluid light shows up on your dashboard, you don't go and just take the bulb out. That ain't working. You need to do something about it.
Yeah.
So that will be my 2 tips, your dashboard and your breath.
Brilliant. Well, Thor, thanks again for joining us and on this amazing journey and mini-series on the psychology of survival. For those of you who are interested in the work that Thor does, please click on the link below. And any of you who are watching who may be struggling right now, you are not alone. We are in this together, and there are so many resources out there. And don't forget to ask for help if you need it. Thor,
Absolutely.
thanks again.
Thank you.